Jeff and I have known each other for 31, 32 years. We both live in the Boston area, about 6, 7 miles apart. And I would guess that we see each other as much overseas as we do at Pete's coffee shop in the Boston area. Jeff explained something just now which I think is very fundamental to both of our work, which is the number of people that have told us, what a relief, what a joy it is to actually be able to develop software in a way where they can be creative, productive, and work with their friends and their buddies about it. And more than anything else, that's just it gives you a sense of you're doing the right thing. Now, I've never understood as clearly the difference between Jeff's type of work and my type of work until he explained how he was flying over North Vietnam at 30,000 feet dropping bombs, because at the same time I was in the Merchant Marine as a second mate. And I was in freighters going from the United States to Vietnam up the Saigon River to deliver the material, fighting off river pirates in the Saigon River, desperately trying to stay alive while you were flying at 30,000 feet saying, take that. You had a good life. and that's kind of interesting. Like Jeff, I did other things before I got into software, but I remember still the very first software project I got. And it was perhaps before some of you were born. But this guy said, hey, Ken, we just bought a mini computer. And we also bought some equipment that it's got to control because they're going to be used in our order processing department. And you're not going to believe this, but that computer doesn't have any of what they call an operating system to control those optical character readers. So here's the manual. Go build one. And wow, I mean, what a great life this is, where someone will give you, an open blank problem like that and say, go do something with it. And this was an 8K mini computer, and all there was assembler. And this to me was like the epiphany of our profession. It's a wonderful type of place to be. And I worked on and off at different types of work throughout the years. And I was actually there when waterfall started being introduced as a way to create more predictability and control and certainty in software in 78, 79. And I kept, the thing that struck me as I was working through this was, what was I doing wrong? Why was this so hard? Why was it so difficult? Why couldn't I pull the people together? Just even this PERT chart, this Gantt chart looked good. Everything seemed, but it didn't work. And that was very, very frustrating. And finally, in 1985, I decided, that this wasn't getting me anywhere, so I quit working in large corporations. They've never been my best place anyway, so that was okay. And I've run my own company since then. And that was where Jeff and I had stayed in touch, but that was where we became reunited, because I was getting to be very knowledgeable about what they used to call computer-aided software engineering technology, where you could model structured methods, artifacts, and later information engineering and then objects. And I got in touch with Jeff, and he was working at a company, Saddlebrook Corporation, building banking software. And neither of us really knew about iterative incremental and the advantage of quick transparency and knowing exactly where you were. And I remember the guy in charge of it said, you guys have only a year to finish that software. Was it $1 million we had or $2 million? It wasn't enough. And we weren't sure. So we went over, and this is literally the state of software projects. You don't know. So in desperation, we used Kokomo, a planning model, estimating system, and we came up with, wow, it looks like we're like 2 years and $4 million. And sure enough, it did take more than a year and $1 million. But the point of that is the uncertainty in these software projects. And so I was really working with the case vendors and working with large methodology companies like Ernst & Young and Coopers & Lybrand. And so I founded my own company. I figured that it must have been that methodologies were very hard to use because they were manual. They were just, flipping pages to pages. And yet here was computer-aided software engineering tools. So we built the first ALM product, ALM 0.0002. And what it did is it automated these large methodologies. And it also automated their linkages to the case tools and all that. And Cooper's and IBM and those places resold their methodologies on it. And I was like, wow, this is good. This will solve the problem. And as someone told me, they said, methodologies were pigs, and all you did is put them on roller skates. They're faster, but they're not any better. And I remembered back in 1985, I had been at a conference, and I heard this person get up and say, waterfall is an appropriate way to use it. It's a metaphor for the manufacturing system that we use in our car companies. And it's just that we're using it wrong. And if they build cars very successfully. And I propose and I strongly advise that we all figure out how to use this system, because if they can build cars one after another, we can build systems one after another. It's just that we're using it wrong. So I got a call from Jeff, 93, sounds right. And he said he was very involved in object management group. And they wanted to know what sort of methodologies or processes would be most appropriate for OO type development. And Jeff says, hey, Ken, you're working with Coopers and those people, and you're doing OO development too, so which one do you use? Like Summit D or Navigator, those are names that are obscure now. And I said, geez, none of them. If I used any of them, we'd be broke. They're too inflexible. We have a lot of change. The technology's a little unstable. And so we started talking together and working together. And because we actually had very similar ways of addressing small companies with huge amounts of change and needing to know where we were. And it was 95 Uppsala that we did that first paper. And I think that was the first place it became visible. And the good news is we're still alive. No one's hunted us down and killed us yet. And since 95, we've done lots of work with many companies to both help formulate Scrum better, because there were some things that we weren't clear of, but also to help companies use it. Now, I got sucked into waterfall. It seemed like a really good approach, seemed like a really good work. So in 1994, I went and worked with some people I knew at DuPont Advanced Research Facility who were process control experts. And I said, so we're thinking about this kind of approach, and I'm really unsure before I go betting the farm on this, or making a fool of myself, that this has some basis. So there's some theoretical underpinnings to this. And they said, well, tell us a little about what you do now. I said, well, what we do is we have very long projects where we spend lots of money, and we do a lot of planning up front, and then we deliver a system. He said, well, how successful are you? So, well, about 45% of them are, what they should be. I said, wow. They said, that's a long time and a lot of money and stuff to invest in, something that has such a high degree of failure. They said, why don't you, just shorten it down? Rather than doing it for that long, why don't you just shorten down the amount of risk you're taking to something much more reasonable? And he said, this is what we use when we do complex work. And this is called complex process control or empirical process control. So rather than trying the whole thing at once and finding out that nothing worked, instead do it for a much shorter period of time and then inspect and see if it worked and what didn't work, and then make adjustments and then do it again and again and again. And they said, this is a really good approach if you're building cars or something like that. And you have a very simple process, and you want for high volume manufacturing at the lowest possible prices. They said, but we always advise this to people unless it doesn't work. And they said 45% is not working. And so we recommend use this, where instead you are using empiricism and you are planning, just-in-time planning throughout the entire process. And there's whole bodies of work on this, and Babatunde Ogunaki. Jeff and I work with people with strange names. It's weird. None of this would happen if we, with more reasonable names, hadn't taken it on. Strange. No one named Babatunde will succeed. So studied his stuff and felt comfortable that we had the underpinnings of this and that this would succeed. So we're using Scrum. We're very successful in a number of companies. Still very low profile, no visibility. A number of places we used it. We never used the words. We never exposed. Instead, we just said, this is what we always do, you know. Let's get together every day. Why don't we deliver more frequently? Let's keep the number of us. I mean, so in Scrum, you know, even though we discovered and have it founded in different things, there's literally nothing new in it that hasn't been a good practice in software development for years and years and years that wasn't overlaid and ruined by waterfall. And I'm not accusing waterfall. I was fully involved in it, tried to make it work. It was just the wrong approach. So starting, it was about 1999, I was helping some of my neighbors' friends find jobs, work their way through college, and found them jobs in quality control, and they were building media neutral feeds for publishing systems. And when they graduated, I was then going to help them, find good jobs in the software industry. And I still remember one of them looked at me and said, Mr. Schwaber, thanks, but no thanks. She said, you know that most of the people in your profession don't like it? I'm like, wow, what do you mean? She said, well, like when I was working in places, we'd find bugs and errors and they would say ignore it. Or they would ask us to modify our report so it didn't look as bad. People would ask us for opinions about what was happening and yell at us if it wasn't what they wanted to hear. Most of the people that come to work, they kind of cringe. And she said, so, that's not really a great profession. I'm going to a place where our people have more integrity. I'm going to take a job on Wall Street. Now, I've been in software development a long time, and this is like the frog in water that starts cold and gets hotter and hotter. You don't notice until you experience something different. And this was like a shot across my face because I didn't know other people who were trying to do our work have viewed us the same way. And then I reflected on it and realized that our customers actually thought the same of us. They didn't like us either. Why can't you guys develop something and deliver it on time? So since 1999, 2000, Scrum, extreme programming, all that's become more popular. That's good. One person at Intuit said, hey, Ken, we used waterfall, then we used another variant of waterfall, then we used RUP, then we used extreme programming, built our own agile process. What do you think is going to come after Scrum? And the point is, Scrum is not solving a single problem. That's not the intention of it. It's a tool you can use to gain engineering excellence. It will tell you how you're doing by creating transparency in your organization. And when we started discussing and getting up in public and talking about Scrum, I thought this would be like a 1 or 2 year thing. I thought, my wife, Chris, and myself would be in Barbados by now, retired and, drinking pina coladas. Much to my surprise, when we started working with companies that were starting to try to use Scrum, they were deeply trained and habituated in waterfall techniques. They were used to cutting quality to meet a date. They weren't used to actually getting something done in a period of time. They were unaware of modern engineering practices like acceptance test-driven development, refactoring, emergent architecture. Because, of course, if you're rushing to push out more stuff, you don't have time to do it right. And I'm working with their customers to help them become what we call product owners with agility. And they're like, they've been burnt so many times, they could be bothered. They don't care. They don't want to be engaged because they don't think it's possible we could do better. And so what we've been finding over the years is this is not a simple thing. We saw GM, Toyota, and Ford and Chrysler observe Toyota since the early 50s gain engineering and industrial excellence with lean. None of them took it seriously. Or if they did, there's no evidence in their factories that it actually took hold. And as a result, 2 of the 3 of them declared bankruptcy, and Toyota is, by and large, ascendant over them, except for the earthquakes and the tsunamis, which, whatever. So here we are in almost the same situation, where we have an industry mired in practices which cause defects, which cause slippages, which cause the people in the industry to dislike their work, which cause overruns, which cause our customers to distance themselves from us, which cause our customers to make us sign contracts that will give them penalties when we don't deliver as they expect. And to change to a different type of situation is a radical change. It's as simple and radical as what I mentioned earlier today, where I'm talking to a chief financial officer, and he says, so Ken, what do you do for a living? And I said, well, I help people build software in 30 days. He said, oh, so I don't have to wait 18 months to get what I don't want. I said, that's right. I'll give you what you don't want in 30 days. That is a huge shift in a company. People are used to, knowing that things aren't going to work out, engaging in plausible deniability, politics to cover things up. And here we have the possibility that something that is different than what someone predicted may be seen at the end of a sprint. That requires a fair amount of integrity to keep that transparency and make hard decisions around it. Much easier to just cover it up and say, oh, that really wasn't, we'll fix that later. This is a very different way of thinking. This is a very different way of acting. And I have a lot of reasons I'm doing this. One, my neighbor's kids. That was a very embarrassing moment. Second, I have had tremendously good experiences in software development, and I would like to restore that to us to whatever extent I can. The third thing is I think that we are getting into hugely complex products world situations. There are a lot more people. We have advanced technologies. We need better software development practices and people using them. When you consider how many of the embedded software products are now being inserted in our body or being used in the planes that we fly at 40,000 feet over the ocean, I think it's probably a good thing if we get a lot better at what we do. And it's not going to get better. It's going to become more critical as we need more of these things to cope with the complexity of 7 billion people in our world. Jeff and I both try to work as much as we can with companies who have the sense of urgency and the determination to change from where they are to a more agile, professional, competent company. There aren't that many. It's a very hard work. It's a 5 or 6 year effort to change a company to that. It's even 1 or 2 years to get their engineering organization tooled and trained to understand, this whole idea of building a piece of usable software in one iteration. And reason why I personally come and meet with people like you is I hope to enlist you in the crusade. This is a quiet revolution. At the very bottom of it, we're going from people who are intelligent people like yourselves who are used to coming to work and being told what to do and to make it look like you did what that is, whether it makes sense or not, to asking for organizations where you are empowered to figure it out yourselves and be as creative as possible. I mean, what a huge shift. And one is a place worth going to work to. The other is a place where you hope that you get to retire. And so that's just a phenomenal thing that we're trying to do. And if we can enlist you, if we can give you insights that there are possibilities of this being a great profession to work in, if we can give you insights that this is critical to our world and to our profession, much less, just our job satisfaction, and you engage in this, we're delighted. So I hope Jeff and myself, you heard Jeff, he has a cold, he's sick. He came here just to talk to you. And me, I don't know, I'm just crazy, so I came here to talk to you anyway. But I hope that in some ways we have reached you. And I hope that when we get a chance to respond to some of your questions, we can give you some insights or help you with some misunderstandings. A key understanding that will help you when you're asking us questions that because you'll be looking at problems and you'll be looking at how do I do this and how do I do that. The very basis of Scrum is you can't be sure. And what you'd be often looking for are solutions that will solidify and give you solid answers. We actually don't have any of them because our basis is this is complex work where all you can do is try a little bit of something, this is fail often, fail early, and see how it worked. And then try it again and see how it works. Little interesting, hard because you can fail a lot, requires a lot of intelligence to keep on top of it and see what's going on. And so unfortunately, unlike the waterfall thing, we don't have any solid, firm answers you can put in your pocket and succeed with for the rest of your life. If we did, we wouldn't be giving it away like Scrum, we'd be charging an arm and a leg. You don't have any, do you? Yeah, I don't either. So, glad to answer your questions. Thank you for having us here. We wish you well. We encourage you to join us in this quest for professionalism and self-sufficiency. Thank you.